Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I love it when the practical things back up the theory. Now, a while ago, you can go and find these videos if you choose to do so, I was discussing the effect of the media that your plant's in on what happens when you fertilise and water, especially, considering what happens to pH in the pot. And I started off with a water suitable for feeding my Masdevallias, Restrepias and things like that, with a suitable adjusted pH right where I wanted it. And halfway through watering I thought, I wonder what's happened to my water. So I tested it again, and the pH had dropped down enough to totally affect what I was doing and spoil what I was doing. So I had to discard the water before I carried on. So I now know from practical experience and testing as I went along, when you've got a plant that needs to stay moist and it's in some sort of bark and moss or just moss or whatever like that, the media will affect what happens to the water you pour in. Yeah? So let's think, if I had a pH, well, it was about 6.1. And it's a low-level feed. We're talking about Masdevallias, Restrepias, and in actual fact Paphiopedilums, all of which are plants that like to stay moist. Yeah. So whatever you pour into them is going to stay there a while. Yeah. So when my water went in at around pH 6.1 and an appropriate feed level, it flushed out everything that was in there. That's the way I water. They get a good soak, pour water through multiple times. So that cleared everything out that was there before and left in there what I wanted. Yeah? But then what would happen? The plant would carry on taking up nutrients that it could at that pH, and then the pH would drop. Slowly but surely, in that type of media, the pH would drop to a point where it's gone below that magic midpoint. And the other nutrients would be taken on board because it won't have used them all. That's why these are such light feeders. They really don't need much, and they take it on board at a very slow rate. So, what do I need to change? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? If the media in the pot is going to drop the pH, I need to start at a higher point. Simples. These are such simple little things. So if that water had started at, say, 6.3, 6.4, then it would have taken longer for the pH to drop in the pot, giving a bit more time for the nutrients that go in at the higher pH before the pH dropped down and allowed the others to go in. It's not going to run out of nutrients, not these sort of plants. They take up so little until the next time I water. And don't forget there's a flush in there, which takes everything back out again. But then what happens? That would be RO water. That's got quite a high pH relative to orchids, above the, 5.5 to 6.5. That's what everybody says. That's got backup. That's not just old school stuff. That's got backup. But I'd be starting at a pH quite a bit higher than that. But it would lower down. The pot will do that, the media will do that, so that the moisture that it's got is not a lot of use to it, because it had nothing in it, but it won't do the plant any harm. It's not too alkaline for those plants, because the media in the pot will drop it down. So, another rethink. That's that little set of plants that need treating slightly differently. The difference does not create extra work. When I put my feed in my water, I've still got to get the TDS meter out and have a look and see how strong it is, depending on the plants I'm about to water. So I haven't added any work in. And, because of my newfound knowledge about the pH swing, I always test the pH as well and make sure I get it where I want it. So I haven't got to do anything extra. I've just got to think a bit. That's all it is. It's just thinking a bit. Not a lot. It's just a simple little thing. And that's why I did those videos, because obviously if I just poured that water on a bare rooted plant, that's what it's going to get. So it's quite important for those sort of plants to get it right, because there's nothing going to happen to that water until it gets some more. It's going to take on board what it can, use it if it can, and if it couldn't use it on that watering, I can now guarantee it will use it on the next watering. So it's a switch. We'll take on board some of these, next time we'll take on board the rest, and the next time you'll probably get a flush. These are simple little things. It's not complicated. Okay, that's just some thoughts. Be aware of your media and what it does to your feed and the pH of your water. Yeah? Now what's going to happen, it's not going to happen anymore, I can assure you. With my pH swing, what would happen to, say I drop down to say 5.6, 5.7. pH of 5.6, 5.7 is right on that borderline where if it gets any lower it's outside of the range that orchids like. And what's going to happen to that water in the pot? And I'm not even going to bother answering that, because by now it should be obvious. It's going to drop down to a level that is inappropriate. So am I going to do that again? Am I hell? From now on these type of plants, I don't need to worry about a pH swing. I just need to start with a pH slightly above the 5.8, and the media will change the pH for me. So they can now have something very similar to what they were getting before. Unfortunately, what they were getting before, the pH would have been too high. So I would have been excluding some things probably. So by just that minor adjustment, all my plants in these type of medias that need to stay moist can go back to how they were, nearly. But instead of just adding the feed in there and leaving the pH that was probably about 6.7, 6.8 because the feed level was so low, I'll drop that down to somewhere above the 5.8 mark, but not too far above it, and then allow the pot to do the work for me and take that pH down and allow those other nutrients to go in. So that's those type of plants. That would not be appropriate for other type of orchids growing in different ways, but for these that's going to work. So that's what I'm going to do. Simples. I'll add on another bit, the practical, not the theory. I just knocked up quite a reasonable amount of feed because I was about to do my dailies, and it happens I overcooked the feed, so it was a higher level than I wanted to do my mounts with. And I thought, well, rather than waste it, what can I use that on? I know, I'll water all my Phalaenopsis. Yeah, they're quite happy with the higher feed level, so I thought, let's have a quick look at the pH. That was 6.1. I thought, well, given what they had last time, that'll do fine. I've just watered, well, let's count them. The two biggies at the back, that's 2. Another big one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Some of those are in holy clay pots. They're nearly all in chunky bark to a degree, but some of them, the finer rooted sorts, the minis and things, have got a bit of moss. This one has, yeah. So this one's actually quite a dense media, and as soon as these flowers are over, it's coming out of that and going in a larger bark without any moss, because it doesn't need it now. I had to recover this plant. I wanted extra moisture. I don't anymore. So it can come out, you know, before the roots start giving up because they're staying wet too long. You know, that's Phalaenopsis. That's what we do. And I watered that one over there. Now, that one's in next to nothing because that didn't have very good roots. That's got a rock in the bottom of the pot to hold the flipping thing upright. That takes up some space, and then it's only got chunky bark. So that's what I've watered. Guess what the pH is now? 5.6. So what I wanted to do, I haven't done to all of those plants. Gradually, as I went through them, that changed. Yeah? So I need to take that on board now. That's important. And most of those are just in large bark and it's relatively fresh, and yet it had that dramatic effect. Yeah, so I've got to take that on board now. Unfortunately now, the level of feed that's in there is too high for anything else that I want to water today. And the fact that the pH has dropped down below 5.8, that's not what I planned on using today because of my cycle, my schedule. So I've now got to discard that amount of water. I shouldn't be wasting that amount of RO water. It's precious. So I need to plan better, you know. I was hoping to use that for my mounts, and that would have been enough. And most of those are bare rooted or in small amounts of moss, so wouldn't have had a dramatic effect. But I'm now aware that the effect is more dramatic than I thought. So I need to mix up smaller amounts, use it, check it. If it's still okay, carry on. If not, discard it. I tell you what, the plants in the garden are getting a good feed today. That goes into soil. That's a totally different thing altogether. And whatever they get out there, they'll put up with. The soil's going to change it all anyway. So yeah, the practical is now backing up the theory. And the more of that I can do, the more I end up knowing, the more I can make minute changes and deal with it. If you don't know these things, you can't deal with it. And if you do know them, you've got two choices. You can choose to ignore them, or you can choose to deal with them. I know which way I'm going. See you next time.